So what I want to try to do is, there's a lot of things, and when we talk about beef management and stuff at school, a lot of people know what they do, but they don't really know why. So I'm hoping to talk about a few of those sorts of things. So generally, when we feed, what about the lambs? What do you feed usually, grass or alfalfa? What was that?
Grain.
I mean, as far as the forage goes. So what we usually say is on calves, we really want them to have a big old belly. We want them to look like they're deep and full. So we will feed them a low quality forage, like the one on the left. A low to medium quality grass hay. Because that'll really fill them out, make them look full, make them look big and deep, and everything that the judge wants. Especially on heifers, and I'll talk about that later on. We're gonna put some stuff like bee pulp and get them to really blow that belly out. Now on lambs and goats, we don't really want that, right? We kind of want them to look tubular. So we're gonna feed more of a alfalfa type hay. Could be grass if it's really high quality, maybe Timothy, or something that's more digestible because it'll go through them faster and won't cause them to blow out quite so bad. So, kind of, and that's, everybody's got their own secrets and tricks. So I'm not trying to tell you yours is wrong if you're doing it a different way. This is just what we've gone through. And so what about different, so if I've got energy and protein, we just talked about hay. The other kind of feedstuffs that we will feed animals is energy and protein. Does anybody know what I mean by energy? Or an example of what energy is? If I wanted to increase energy to the diet, what would I feed them? Anybody? How about grain, right? You guys feed them a lot of grain. So that could be corn, that could be soybean meal, or no, excuse me, not soybean meal, but that could be corn, oats, bar, rye, wheat. A lot of the byproducts we can classify as a protein or an energy source. So by definition, an energy source has less than 20% protein. Okay, so if I say, if somebody tells you you develop your ration and you need more protein in it, you're not going to put one of these types of feeds in it. You're going to put a protein source into it. Okay, so here's some pictures of some energy grains like the corn, the oats, the barley. How many guys feed a complete show mix already, like out of the bag, or do you mix your own? You kind of feed it out of the bag, complete mix? You mix your own. So do you guys buy the ingredients or do you buy some, what do you feed them? Yes,
We feed them corn and payback pellets.
Okay, so you put some payback in. Do you know what's in the payback? Is there protein or is it energy?
It's to make them look fatter.
Okay.
I mean,
Excellent.
We just asked at the feed store.
So you just buy like whole corn, cracked corn?
Whole corn.
Okay. So here's as a general rule, if we process a feed, it's more digestible. So they will get more out of that energy if you feed a cracked corn or flake corn or anything like that. Anytime it's been processed, whether it be hay, whether it be grain, the more digestible it is. Now, if you're feeding them a lot, maybe that's not what you want because we could blow it up. We could get too much energy on them. So if you're feeding an awful lot of corn, maybe we wanted your whole shell corn so that it's not quite as digestible. Go ahead and ask questions anytime.
Sorry. So the energy, what's the benefits of feeding them the energy?
Well, so energy is going to be the majority of your diet. It's going to make up 80%, 85% of the diet. And that's what's going to get them to gain weight and get them fat.
So to gain weight.
How much of the shell corn would blow?
Well,
if we did like the other not shell corn and fed them, how much with it? How much would blow them?
so you're pretty safe feeding whole shell corn. So you'd have to feed an awful lot and feed hardly any grass to get into trouble, any hay. Okay, so when I'm a UW graduate, I got my PhD at UW, and then I worked at Purdue University for 3 years. And back there, everybody's really small feeders, and they would feed whole shell corn just on a self feeder, so they could eat as much as they wanted. And that's how they did it, is low management, and then they'd have a bale of hay in the corn and they'd eat as much hay as they wanted. And it worked really well. And that's why they would feed, instead of getting a cracked corn, that's why they feed a whole shell corn, so it wasn't quite as digestible. And So, to answer your question, I think you're probably pretty safe. If you bump them up slow, and we'll talk about that, then keep doing what you're doing, okay? Any other questions? So if we go to protein, proteins are gonna be soybean meal. So I'm guessing your pellet that you're feeding is an alfalfa pellet or something like that that's got protein. Distiller's grain pellet, or I'm not sure what Payback's pellet is. But I'm assuming, and I would actually check on it if I were you. So do you guys know why is protein important? You feed them energy, puts a lot of fat on. What would protein do?
Puts muscle on.
Yeah, it puts a lot of muscle. So we need the combination, because to build protein, we need the energy, which is like the building blocks of protein, but then we need the amino acids in protein, and it combines together and builds this protein. So we need to make sure and meet their nutritional needs. So I would check on that, your pellet. Cattle will actually gain weight really well if they're deficient in protein, but they'll be small muscle. So it's kind of hard to say they're not gaining well, or they are gaining well, so they're not short in protein. So I would always double check, because you can get them to gain well and put a lot of fat on, but they're not going to have near the muscling that they should if we feed protein. So have you guys heard of the Atkins diet? Everybody knows about that, right? So the same is actually true in cattle. They're not going to lose weight like maybe we will, but converting protein to energy is not very efficient. So they won't gain weight well. So if we put them on a diet really high in a byproduct like a distiller's grain, we're feeding too much protein and they're not going to gain as much as they should. So it's a fine balance. We want our growing cattle to be in the 14–15% protein range, and we want our finishing cattle probably in the 12 to 14. You see some of the products down around 8 or 10, excuse me. So, but that finishing phase will be the very end when we're trying to put fat on. But we need to have protein in the diet early so that we can get the muscle. So here's just some pictures of different proteins, and again, the same thing. The more processed it is, the more digestible it is. So we want to feed like a meal, soybean meal, corn gluten meal, distiller's grains, stuff like that has a lot of protein in it. Let me skip over here. Does anybody feed fats? Does anybody, how about those liquid, or what are some of the pelleted fats? The high octane? A lot of sheep people feed that. Like at the end, you get in the big square jug, the high octane Purina feed. They've got a fat